What is up, YouTube? Katelyn Macias here, and today we're going to talk about photography mistakes that no other video will tell you. This is true because I did my research. I've watched every video you could possibly think of on mistakes you're doing in photography, things you're doing wrong in photography, all those types of videos, and no other video really talked about this stuff. So today I'm going to tell you some things that you might be doing wrong and also how to fix them. I'm not just going to say, hey, you're doing this wrong. Thanks for watching, subscribe. Don't worry guys, I'm also gonna tell you how to fix them. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So point number one is using the brightness of your LCD screen to gauge the exposure of your photos. Now, why is this wrong? Well, let's say you take a picture, you go to check it on your LCD screen. Oh, that looks really good. It's not overexposed, it's not underexposed. It's actually, it's perfectly exposed. Then you go in editing and it's really bright or it's really dark and you're like, what happened? What the heck? It was perfectly fine on my camera. What is this madness? Well, what happened was your viewfinder brightness was either too high and it made your image look good when in fact your image was too dark, or your LCD brightness was really low so it made your image look darker when actually it was perfectly exposed. For example, this photo, if your viewfinder brightness is kind of high, your photo might look like this, when in reality it was taken like this. Now, if the opposite's true, and if your photo looks like this in your viewfinder, when really in fact it was taken like this, well, do you see why that could cause some issues? So how do we fix this? We'll use the exposure meter in your camera. It's usually a little bar at the bottom and it'll have -3 and +3 or whatever number is. It's usually around there. And there will be a little line right at 0. If it's right at 0, that means you're good. Your photo is perfectly exposed. If it's over here on +3, that means it's overexposed, way too bright. If it's over here on the darker side, that means it's underexposed, way too dark. This has saved my life so many times where I take a picture, look at it, I'm like, that looks really good, but my meter is saying it's overexposed. Sure enough, I transfer it to my phone. Oh dang, my meter was right. So go back, adjust the meter, focus on the meter, take the photo, and even if it looks overexposed or underexposed in my LCD screen, I trust that meter, and sure enough, when I go into editing, my photo is perfectly exposed. So guys, use that meter, trust that meter. Do not trust your LCD screen. Don't. I've ruined so many photos by doing that. Point number 2, using way too wide of an aperture to blur the background when you're shooting multiple subjects or multiple people. Now, why is this a mistake? Well, I understand you want the background blurred out, and you could still do that, but if you have your aperture way too wide, the people's edges will also kind of start to blur, or maybe somebody's half of their face will start to blur out, things like that. For example, look at this basketball picture that I took. Now, if you pay attention, number 9 is in focus, and the guy to his left looks in focus, right? But if you look at the fist, number 13, if you look at his fist, that's actually blurred out, and so is his face a little bit. It's not very crisp, it's not very detailed, it's actually kind of blurry. Now, why did this happen? Because I was using an aperture way too wide to blur out the background, that it only captured some things in focus and it didn't capture the entire group in focus. So learn when too wide of an aperture is too wide. Worst case, you can also blur out the background in editing. If you don't know how to do that, maybe I'll make a video on that in the future, but also you can just YouTube or Google it because that's like a whole nother video in of itself. So guys, don't get carried away with your aperture. Point number 3, not backing up original photos. Now, a lot of people will back up their edited photos in JPEG after they've processed them, but you need to be backing up your raw photos. And if you're not shooting in RAW, well, that's another mistake that you will find in all those other videos I talked about. Start shooting in RAW. Trust me, if you're a photographer, you need to shoot in RAW. So, not backing up original RAW photos. Now you're saying, why do I need to back up my RAW photos? Let's say a couple years or even a couple months down the line, you look back and you're like, you know what, I wanna make a change to that photo. I wanna edit this photo. I wanna make this photo look like this. Well, if you go back, you're gonna be editing a JPEG photo. So you're gonna need the raw photo in order to edit it. So back up your raw photos, and if you want, you can also back up edited photos, because I understand you might make some edits and you really like those edits and you wanna save those edits. But always back up raw files in addition to edited JPEG files. So many times I've looked at a photo years later. 10 years ago, I took a photo and I wanted to edit it today, but I didn't have the raw file backed up. I only had the JPEG. So I mean, I did what I could, but it wasn't as good as if I had the raw file. So guys, trust me, backup raw files. And the last point, which I think is honestly the most important one, I feel like I should have started with this one, but it's fine. Thank you for watching this far. Anyways, the last point, not leaving enough room for cropping and editing. So what does this exactly mean? Well, let's say you're taking a picture of this Leatherman. You just got it, you wanted to post on social media, whatever. That looks pretty good, right? The frame is pretty filled up with the subject. It's easy to tell what the subject is, blah, blah, blah. Well, look at the background. See how it's kind of crooked? So let's say you wanted to fix that because it kind of looks weird and it kind of throws off the position and, you know, angle of the Leatherman. So let's say you wanted to fix that. Well, if you go to crop it, look what happens. This is how it looks cropped. See how now the edges are cut off? How do you fix this? Shoot wider out, shoot further away. For example, look at this photo of the Leatherman. See, the framing doesn't really look right. There's too much white space or too much empty room, but see the background, how it's crooked again? Now when you go to fix it, this is how it looks like, and everything is straight, the frame is filled up now. This is a much better photo. So guys, when you're taking pictures of close-up things, make sure you kind of zoom out a little bit just to leave some wiggle room for cropping. Now, let's say you took a picture of this Leatherman, once again, zoomed out, you did everything great, but you're like, bro, my background is straight, I don't need to crop anything. Well, that's fine. Then just crop it to fill up the frame. So there's absolutely no harm, no drawbacks, nothing to just leaving a little bit of wiggle room for cropping. But if you try to get it all in the frame the first shot, if you need to crop something, you might end up having to cut your photo's edges, or you might end up just leaving it like that and having your background crooked. So leave room for cropping. And once again, I've ruined a lot of photos by not doing this. I take a landscape, beautiful, there's a tree in this right corner that I love, and then I'm like, dang, the horizon is crooked and I have to fix this. I mean, it's a landscape photo, I can't leave it like this. And now I have to crop some of that tree out that I love. So always leave wiggle room for cropping. Trust me on that one. Well guys, that's pretty much all I had for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take one. So always leave wiggle room, point number 1. Why do I still have that? No, scratch that last sentence. Based on the brightness of your viewfinder, is it really called viewfinder? I feel like it's not called viewfinder. That's your LCD screen. Oh man, wow, that was rough. We're restarting this point.